This is Milestone 7. For Milestone 7, um, I got the idea through a user test to add a Non-Lan component to the game. This is to play across the internet, and I used Photon for this feature. This was my first time using Photon. You click the Non-Lan button here, and you're taken to this scene. And first, you create a match ID. And then you're taken to the lobby, which uses Photon. To create a room, you can either create a public or a private room. This is the public room section here to enter in the public room variable, and this is the private room section to enter the private room variable. And here's some of the code to enter a match ID. This loads the game lobby script and disables the match panel once you enter the match ID. And the match ID is sent to a PHP server and is written to a text file as a flat file database entry. And this is to search through the list of match ID names. And this verifies the input to make sure that there was text entered into the input fields. And I watched a tutorial on YouTube about MD5 hash. This hashes the the match ID password. And the hash is verified once it's retrieved. But the rest of the script, most of it is just repetition of previous scripts that I have done. So that part was pretty easy. The rest of the script that sends the variables to the PHP server and the flat file database, that was easy because it's just repetition of the previous scripts. But I did have to look up a tutorial on MD5 hash to hash the password. And this is the Photon lobby script. Now, Photon was actually it's actually kind of easy to implement once you get the hang of it. I watched a couple of YouTube tutorials to set up rooms and everything. So on start, you have to make sure that you're connected to Photon's network. PhotonNetwork.connect using settings. And this is to go back to the menu scene and press the back button. And this is called here if for some reason you can't connect to Photon. You would get a disconnected failure message. And once you're connected to Photon's master server, it'll say connected to master, and you have joined the lobby. And this is the room list. And the rooms are displayed on the GUI window. And this is the connection status. The connection status is also displayed on the GUI window. And this is to create a public room. All I had to do was change the visibility. That's the difference between a public room and a private room. You just change the visibility of the room name. So for a private room, the visibility is false. And the room name for the private room is hashed. It's hashed to the Photon server. And this is to scroll through the available rooms. And you can join the public rooms that are available. And to join the private room, you just type the name in. And the join private button at the bottom. And this is called, for some reason, you're not able to create a room. And this is called if you're not able to join a room. Like if the room doesn't exist, or is full, or closed. And once you've successfully created a room, the game scene will be loaded. So I'm going to create a public room. And your player username is down here. Says I've joined. And there's the room name here. And my username. And it says I'm the master client. And you disconnect here. Takes you back. And you can search through match IDs here. going to create another one. I forgot the password. I'm going to start it over. The server is still running. And I can't create another room while the server's still running. And I also created a kill feed. Oh, this is the text. This is the script that displays the player's name. It creates a name tag for the player, but the name is only displayed if there's another player in the room with you. So it's not displayed on your character if you're the only person in the room. This line here returns if the photon view is yours. If it's your character, you can't see the name tag. If photon view is mine, return. And this is the game manager for the non-LAN players. This registers the player. It registers the player on start once the game starts. This script is attached to a cube game object that's attached to the player, and it takes the ID, the photon view ID, and registers the player once the game starts. It's the same thing as the other game manager that's for LAN. And this is the script that keeps track of the player's health. And if the player is damaged once, then they're dead. And this function here sends that message to each player in the room once a player dies. And this subtracts the damage. and after the player dies, they have to restart the game. And this is called on all of the players, the take damage function. And buffered means once a player joins, then the function will be called on them too if a new player joins the room. And this is the message that's sent across the photon network when the player dies. And this is the room controller script that spawns the player once the player joins the room. And this instantiates the player from the folder, from the resources folder. And this is to shoot. This instantiates the bullets. And this is called once the player is in the room, it disables all of the buttons and UI that isn't needed. And this displays the list of people that are in the room. And this displays the master client, the person that created the room. And once you leave the room, you return back to the match ID scene. And this function is called on a button to leave the room. And this concludes Milestone 7.